Namaste everyone, welcome to our YouTube channel Dr.Abhishek Kumar. Today we are going to learn about the histology of ovary. This is ovarian ligament and this one is the longitudinal section of ovary, that is LS of ovary. And here the large amount of blood vessels are present in the medullary part, in the medulla. This one is blood vessel. The surface of ovary is covered by a layer of simple cuboidal epithelium called the germinal epithelium, which is continuous with the mesothelium of peritoneum. This structure is the germinal epithelium. And the term germinal epithelium is a mesomer because it does not give rise to germ cells, that is oocytes. So here is the germinal epithelium. And in orange color pencil, this is tunica albuginea. The germinal epithelium rests on the layer of dense connective tissue called the tunica albuginea. Okay, this one is the structure of primordial follicles, which are located in the periphery of the cortex and inferior to tunica albuginea. The primordial follicles are smallest, simplest in structure. They are surrounded by a single layer of squamous follicular cell. Primordial follicles contain immature, small primary oocytes. Here is the structure of primordial follicle. And as we know that the primary oocyte, which gradually increases in size as the follicles develop into primary, secondary and mature follicles. So here you can see on your screen that this one structure is called, this one is a single layer of squamous follicular cell. It is a single layer, and primary oocytes are 20 to 25 micrometer in diameter. And here is the presence of primary oocyte. Primary oocytes. Before the ovulation of mature follicles, all developing follicles contain the primary oocytes. Beginning at puberty and under the influence of pituitary hormone, some selected primordial follicles grow and enlarge to become primary, secondary and mature follicles. This one is oocyte. And this one is follicular cells. Primordial follicle changes into primary follicle under the influence of FSH, that is follicular stimulating hormone. The layer of zona pellucida in green color, and in pink color this one is the structure of granulosa cell. In yellow color this structure is theca folliculi. All this structure is come under the primary follicles. Primary follicles. We will see the larger structure of primary follicles, mainly the unilaminar and multilaminar. We will make a line for unilaminar and multilaminar of primary follicles. Primary oocytes enlarge in size about 50 to 80 micrometer in diameter, unilaminar primary follicle and multilaminar primary follicle. First we will see the unilaminar primary follicle. This one is cuboidal in shape. And here this is follicular cell which is cuboidal in shape. And in green color this is ZP. ZP means zona pellucida. Zona pellucida. Zona pellucida. Here is the structure of primary oocyte. And around the basement membrane, the stroma cell is present, which is fibroblast, stroma cell. Now come to the multilaminar primary follicle. The follicular cell in the unilaminar, which is cuboidal in shape, then they divide to form a stratified cuboidal layer of granulosa cell. Basement membrane, the outermost layer of follicular cell rests on the well-defined basement membrane that separates it from the ovarian stroma. This one in green color, zona pellucida. Here is oocytes. This oocyte and a stratified cuboidal layer of granulosa cell secrete the glycoprotein called the zona pellucida. The connective tissue stroma surrounding the follicles begin to condense and form a theca folliculi. The theca folliculi later differentiated into two layers. In the secondary follicle, there the theca externa and interna is formed. Formation of theca folliculi. You can see in the unilaminar primary follicles and multilaminar primary follicles, the follicular cell in the unilaminar is cuboidal in shape, and in multilaminar the stratified cuboidal layer of granulosa cell is present, and both the side the zona pellucida is present, although the stroma is condensed in the multilaminar of primary follicle. Now the primary follicle become the secondary follicle after undergoing following changes. Here is the structure of secondary follicle, that is called antral follicle. This is antrum oocyte and granulosa cell, altogether called follicle, secondary follicle. Now in detail structure of secondary follicle, we will see what are the changes occurring during the secondary follicles. So here is the structure of oocyte. Oocyte enlarged and reached its full size about 125 micrometer, and in green color this one is zona pellucida. Basement membrane, basement membrane. Follicle with antral cavity are called secondary or antral follicles. These follicles are larger and situated deep in the cortex. This is the structure of granulosa cell layer. Granulosa cell. Irregular fluid-filled space appear among the follicular cell and join to form a concentric space or antrum filled with the liquor folliculi. This one is antrum. Here is filled with the liquor folliculi. Theca folliculi differentiated into two layers. The internal cellular layer called the theca interna. One point to note here that theca interna and follicular cell secrete the estrogen. And here the outer layer is called theca externa. The outer fibrous layer, and theca interna and follicular cells secrete estrogen. This complete the secondary or antral follicle. Now come to longitudinal section of ovary. Here this we are making oocyte, and this structure is granulosa cell. This structure is corona radiata, and in green color this one is ZP, that is zona pellucida, in secondary follicle also, and here the antrum is present, and here the cumulus ophrus. All this is the mature or Graphene follicle. Mature Graphene follicle. So we will see the detailed structure of mature Graphene follicle here. With the further development of the follicle enlarged in a size as a fluid accumulated in the antrum and dividing the follicular cell in two sets. Here the mature Graphene follicle is called tertiary follicle. Here the secondary oocyte. Secondary oocyte is called ovum also, and in green color the zona pellucida is present. Zona pellucida. The outer set of the cell that line the cavity from the membrana granulosa and the inner set that surround the ovum and attach it to one pole of the follicle to form the cumulus ophrus. Now the Graphene follicles measure about 10 mm or more in diameter and is seen bulging out of the cortex on the surface. At this stage, the primary oocyte completes its first meiotic division and becomes the secondary oocyte, that is called ovum. It is worth to note that all the primary oocytes enter into the prophase of first meiotic division during the fetal life, but meiosis remains the arrest at the stage till just before the ovulation. Here the membrana granulosa. Here the layer of corona radiata and a layer of cumulus ophorus is there. This one is the structure of cumulus ophorus. At mid-cycle, about 14 days of a 28-day cycle, under the influence of estrogen, there is a sudden increase in the amount of liquor folliculi which is present in the antrum, causing the rupture of mature follicle and release of secondary oocyte along with one layer of loose adherent granulosa cell that is called corona radiata into the peritoneal cavity, and the process is called ovulation. From the peritoneal cavity, the ovum is rapidly drawn into the uterine tube, and here is the basement membrane you can see. Here also presence of theca internal layer is there in mature Graphene follicle, which is also called mature tertiary follicle, and theca externa is present. Theca interna and follicular cells secrete what? It secretes the estrogen. Okay. This complete the mature Graphene or tertiary follicle. Now come to the longitudinal section of ovary. Under the influence of estrogen, there is a sudden increase in the amount of liquor folliculi, causing to rupture of mature follicle. Here the membrana granulosa and here is the antrum and liquor folliculi, causing rupture of mature follicle and release of secondary oocytes. Here this structure is called TI, that is theca interna, and TE, that is theca externa. When the rupture of mature follicles, the release of oocyte nuclei along with that the secondary oocyte, release of secondary oocyte along with zona pellucida, ZP is zona pellucida, and a layer of loosely adherent granulosa cell that is called CR. CR means corona radiata into the peritoneal cavity. This process is called ovulation. From the peritoneal cavity, the ovum is rapidly drawn into the uterine tube. Now come to this structure. This structure is TLC. TLC means theca lutein cell, are derived from the theca interna cells and secrete estrogen. Now come to GLC, that is granulosa lutein cell. They are large pale staining cells with vesicular nuclei found at the deeper part of corpus luteum. After ovulation, the wall of follicle collapses and become infolded and get transformed into a temporary endocrine organ that's called the corpus luteum. The cell of theca interna and granulosa cell undergo hypertrophy and filled with the lipochrome pigment to become lutein cell. The two lutein cells, granulosa lutein cells, secrete and synthesize the progesterone hormone, and theca lutein cell secrete estrogen. Now come to the corpus umbilicans. After its functional activity is over, it undergoes regression and is replaced by fibrous hyalinized scar called corpus albicans, that is also called white body. If the liberated ovum is fertilized, the corpus luteum will survive for 4 to 5 months under the influence of human chorionic gonadotrophin, that is HCG, and is called corpus luteum of pregnancy. If the fertilization does not occur, the corpus luteum functions for only 10 to 12 days and is called corpus luteum of menstruation. Here the medulla, and this one is cortex part. M represent for medulla, C for cortex. Here AF mean the atretic follicle. Several ovarian follicles start maturing during each ovarian cycle, but only one attains full maturity and undergoes ovulation. The other follicle degenerate, that is called atresia, at various stages of maturation and become atretic follicles. This completes the histology of ovary. Thank you. Please do like, subscribe and share our channel with your friends.